Hi, everyone. Welcome to the National Sculpture Society's virtual series of studio tours, visits, and interviews. As you all know better than anyone, foundries offer different services and have different specialties. And finding the foundry that's right for you can be a job in and of itself. Wherever you are in the country, it sometimes makes sense to use a foundry in another part of the country, but getting there can be a challenge, and we thought this would be a great way for you to visit a full service foundry without having to make that initial trip. So thank you so much for joining us on this visit. Joining me on screen right now is Danella Lay. Danella is the ambassador of the NSS sculptures community in Texas. Before I disappear, I just need to please remind everyone to mute yourself throughout the program and ask questions in the chat room. We will get to all of the questions at the end of the presentation, but we had about 200 RSVPs, and if everyone does spill in and everyone starts asking questions at once, you can imagine it'll be difficult to understand what's going on and what's being asked. So I will turn over the screen to Danella. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Today we are visiting Pyrology Foundry and Studio in Texas. As you will soon see, Pyrology is a full-service foundry that has produced all types of works, including Paul Moore's Land Run Memorial in Oklahoma, monumental works by Wesley Wolford, who is in North Carolina, and many other notable sculptors nationwide. Foundry owner Clint Howard provided much-needed funding for a recent exhibition the NSS Texas community had here at Arts Fort Worth, and we are grateful for his generous support of sculptors and sculpture in our community. Please join me in welcoming Clint Howard.
Hello, everybody. So I give you a little brief history. I went to school to be a painter and quickly ended up with a degree in sculpture, or almost a degree in sculpture. I've been doing professional casting for the last 25 years, and this is going to be, we're coming up on the end of our 24th year since I bought, which was what was originally Deep in the Heart Art Foundry and is now Pyrology. We just recently went through a name change, which was, a long coming process for me because I really wanted it to mean something. And so the term pyrology for us means the science of fire, and the idea that everything we do revolves around the need for fire to be part of the process. But also it's been very important to me throughout the history of the company to embrace technology as we've grown and as we've developed, but knowing and maintaining the history of where we come from in this industry. This is a 5,000-year-old process, and so we really have to master everything that's come before us while we try to integrate all the techniques and tools and new equipment and new technology that comes. And so we have been doing that and continue to do that and will continue to do that. And so I just want to welcome y'all, give y'all that little backstory. And we've pre-recorded a video of us taking you on a tour through our campus because it's quite large and is actually two buildings about a quarter mile away from each other. So we're going to show y'all that video, and then we're going to jump back to live and answer any questions y'all have. So welcome to Pyrology. This is our creation department. This is really where we do, all of our traditional enlargement and all of our digital 3D scanning, 3D printing. Some of it's done in this room, some of it's done down in the shop, which we'll show you in a second. We also do CNC milling, traditional hand sculpting for enlargements. Really, we're capable of doing just about anything. If you walk with me in here, we can visit our lead sculptor. This is Matthew McCoy,
Hey guys.
our lead sculptor, and he's working on some projects right now. We're going to be doing a reduction of a life-size piece of Marty Stewart. And zoom out so you can see the whole piece there, Matthew. So you'll see when we walk through the life-size version of this piece, and right now we're working on the digital model to make a, do you know what size this is going to be, Matthew?
12 inches.
A 12-inch maquette. And then on the other screen there is a Phoenix that we did for Ed Hayes that is a life-size and a small piece. So this is our creation department. This is where everything kind of starts. And then we go into the regular production from here. So this is our original building we built in 2002, and we're going to tour you all through, and we're going to walk into the wax pulling room. So we've been basically constantly in construction for the last 3 years, and we're kind of remodeling this room right now as we speak. But this is our wax pulling room. And from here, we pull the waxes, and then we take those pulled waxes and we go into our chasing and screwing department. So this is the chasing and screwing department, and you'll be able to see if you look around in here that we've got the red pieces are 3D printed pieces, and the green pieces are traditional wax painted into the molds or slushed into the molds. But everything that we produce is chased and screwed in this room. And then from this room, it goes through a quality control checkpoint on this back wall. And once that's been approved by our quality manager, then we go into the shell room, which we'll show you next. So this is our shell room. A little loud in here, I apologize. But at any given time, we've probably got 200 pieces moving through our shell room. So you can kind of see small tabletop pieces, the large hanging sections. So these are our two primary tanks. We've got our primary first coat, which is about 350 gallons, and then we've got our backup tank, which is again about 350 gallons. We hang some of the pieces that we do. We hand dip almost everything else. And from the shell room, we're going to go into the courtyard. Got construction and changes happening, so we've got a fill with the construction, but we melt with induction, so our melt pots are controlled by electricity, and we can melt made. It's an independent air-conditioned building. And you can see some different pieces in process here. But at any given time, we've probably got 15 to 20 molds in production. And this kind of left in disarray where he was at when he stopped. So we've got 2 injectors that we use primarily, and this room isn't utilized all the time because we don't always have a demand for injected pieces, but when we are producing pieces that need to be injected, this is where all of the wax injection is done. So this is our 3D printing department that actually houses the printer that can print in a material that's directly castable. So it's an acrylic that's wax infused. So this is our 3D printing room. Everything in this room supports the printer, but the printer itself is this unit. So this printer can print a full 24 by 20 by 48 build chamber every 72 hours. And we can utilize every square inch of that build chamber. So it's usually running 24/7, but we're swapping out a print head right now. So it's in between prints. But once it's printed, it goes into a curing station. So right now we've got a print chamber sitting in this curing station that has been excavated already. But that print chamber goes back into the machine, and we have 2 print chambers that we can swap in and out so that we've constantly got one printing and one curing. All the rest of this equipment is the reclamation system for the powder that goes into the printer and the excavation of the prints. So this is another print chamber that's in that excavation chamber right now. And when we're taking the print chamber out, when we're taking the prints out, the floor of this print chamber raises up, all the powder gets recycled and put back into the printer, and then just the pieces that we needed are what we take out and use. This is basically like a big sandblaster, except there's no sand, it's just blowing air on the parts. And we use this to blow the extra dust print material off of the finished pieces. And when we're done printing, we end up with a part that looks a lot like this. And so this is a section of a mammoth, but this is all rejected pieces. This piece hasn't been wax infused yet. So we actually take these and we heat them up to about 100 degrees, and then we dip them in a wax vat, and that wax infiltrates the parts and makes this where it'll actually burn out in a lost wax casting process. So you'll see as we go into the next room, a lot of the parts are red, and those are infiltrated, just like these, I guess, have been infiltrated. And so the red is the wax, but it's still that acrylic print inside. And then we actually do another surfacing technique that we've developed to get all the texture and all of the detail back in the surface. So we can show you some pieces that have had that done. But before we do that, this is where we keep our CNC mill. So we have a 4-axis CNC mill, and we can do traditional foam enlargements, basically up to any size. But we've had this for about 15 years and still utilize it pretty regularly. This is where we're processing the 3D prints and getting them into the right jobs to go into the wax room. So all of these boxes actually represent sections of monuments that are already already printed, already infiltrated, and they're waiting to go into the wax room to get final chased and sprued. But this is an example of what the finished surface looks like when we're done versus what the surface looks like just raw off the printer. So you can see, you know, off the printer has this kind of dry, grainy look, but the detail's all there. And then once we do our little surfacing, then we can get all that texture back into the surface. This is a life-size mammoth, and this is the head of a baby. So you can actually see this is the mama's trunk here, and then the baby. So this is our new building. We've been in this building for about 18 months. We split the company basically. All the wax, mold, everything we just saw happens at the original building. And then down here we do all of our metal finishing, our patina, our shipping, basing, crating. This is our lobby. And in our lobby we have an artist lounge that we built for visiting artists who are working with us. So it's got a private lock and code that we issue the artists when they're here, and just a place for them to keep their stuff or wait in between steps. And from here, we'll walk through some of the offices. And then we'll go through the break room into the metal shop. So this is our metal shop. And as you can see, we have a lot of monuments going on at various stages of completion. So we'll just walk the loop. So the metal from the other shop is delivered here and then comes through, and this is basically a production line straight down. So we have our assembly that starts at this end, and then various stages of chasing that happens as we go down the room. Our small metal all produces along the wall, so all of our tabletop pieces are worked on along the wall, and then all of our monumental pieces move through the middle of the building. This is another quality control checkpoint like we showed you in the wax room, where our quality manager checks everything and makes sure that it's accurate, matches the artist's original intention, matches the measurements, the texture, detail, edition number, all that stuff. This is our staging for patina. So everything in this room has been through quality control and is waiting for its line in the patina process. So then we're going to walk into the patina department. And this is the patina department, and we've got 3 patina booths and various pieces in development right now. You can see our patina, all of our patina stations have a TV that's been made color accurate to our photo tiles, and they can actually put the photos up on the screens while they're working so that they can reference images while they're actually doing the patina work. So this is our paint booth. This is where we do all of our final lacquer sealing and urethane sealants. And then these are all pieces that Hector's finished in the last day or so. And you can see him working on a piece right now, doing the final polish on the Dragonfly. Then we have our Patina wall of samples. All of our great staff. These are all pieces that are ready for the final QC on Patina. So in the same way that we do the QC in the wax and we do the QC at the metal stage, this is the next spot where we do final QC before it gets shipped out. This is just a very small sampling of some of the patinas we can offer. This is our shipping, basing and shipping department. So this is where we put the final bases on the pieces, build the foam in place boxes, put them in crates. So this room is kind of the final staging for everything before it leaves. And as you can see, we've made a U. So we're back at the other side of the metal shop where I told you that the metal comes into the building. So it comes into the building, goes down through the metal shop, and then wraps back and comes back through the patina department. So everything is moving in a linear fashion through that production line. So thank you for joining us on the tour of Pyrology, Foundry, and Studio. And we'll jump back to the live feed and we'll take any questions that y'all have. Thanks for joining us. So what did y'all think?
Well, we've had several questions already about whether or not the recording will be available. So everybody's enthusiastic to see it again. So and we appreciate you taking the time to film that. It's such a wonderful facility.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun to make.
This is great because I'm actually zooming in from Hawaii, and there is nothing like even close to what you guys have here in Texas. Is brilliant. I hope you can help people outside the state also, because we're from Hawaii and there's not a whole lot of facility that can even provide artists this kind of service.
We have clients in Australia that we produce for regularly,
Awesome.
and all over the continental United States. So really, we do a lot of quality control by FaceTime and by Zoom and just photos and short videos. So we've tried to pride ourselves on being a facility that can produce for professional sculptors and understand the needs of quality and also the needs for this, artists to be in the studio and being creative. And so once we establish a working relationship with an artist and understand their needs and what their quality concerns are that are really specific to their work, we have a pretty solid system in place to keep that quality, consistent throughout the rest of the body of work and for years at a time.
Okay, great. Do you guys also do roto casting?
What do you mean by roto casting? Like plastic casting?
No, actually, you know what? We had sent one of our sculptures to a foundry in Washington State, and they created a mold from silicone, because this is like an 8-foot long surfboard that we were going to reproduce. It was a surfboard art that was going to be reproduced, and they made a mold, and they showed us the process. What they were doing, well, there were two people rotating the mold so that and were pouring at that time. I'm not an artist myself, but I am there. I'm the art angel of Hawaii. I help all the artists get to what they just have a problem. Then I find a solution to the problem. And I find that if you guys have any facility that also does that, please advise me, because we have some molds that are huge that were shipped back from the foundry to us because they closed the foundry and we couldn't find anybody else who could reproduce for us. But when I look at your facility, it looks like there is a possibility that you could be doing that. I can send you all the information, but I just wanted to know on top of my head if you knew what roto casting was, and because that's what I was told by the people, that's what they did when they reproduce that limited edition for us.
Yeah, I'm familiar with what you're talking about, and we can definitely look at what you've got, and
Okay,
we
cool.
can pretty much work with anything, but we don't do roto casting as something that we do on molds that we produce. In general, I mean, we do on small pieces, you pour the wax in, you rotate it around, but when we start getting into monumental pieces, we really don't go more than like about 36 inches on a mold section. But we have worked with molds that were made the way you're describing from other foundries, and so yes, we can utilize them if we have to.
Okay, wonderful, because those molds cost us a lot of money. They were not cheap to make. And I was like,
Yep.
what are we going to do about it? Like, we only were able to produce like 5-6 pieces, and we were told that we can produce 50 of them from that mold. So I was like, okay, well, let me check if we can find some other source to produce that. But we're looking at your video, it gives me more ideas about so many other things that we can do there.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I don't know how I got the invitation, but I am here.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. And we have another question. This one is from Charlotte, and she asks, what is injection waxing?
So injection molds are molds that are designed to handle a higher pressure, and the wax is actually pressurized to about 25 psi and injected under air pressure into the rubber mold. And it's usually for smaller, high detail pieces. It's the way that jewelry is made, and we utilize that for small detailed component pieces to, say, a cowboy on horseback that's holding a pistol, and the pistol's 2 inches or less. We'll make an injection mold on the pistol, or for rein bits or spurs, or say a sword. We've done it for like butterfly wings. Just really anything that's tiny and delicate. We can inject those waxes, and then if we can inject them, we can cast them.
Thank you.
Okay, we have another question. This is from Rob, and he asks, how do you track pieces going through production?
Every piece in the shop has a unique serial number, if you will, and we have a ERP operating system that tracks. Basically, it's our full operating software, our accounting software, our material tracking software, our production tracking software. So the pieces have an item code in our database, and every employee, I think we have like 32 iPads on the floor. So every employee can access the work schedule production and all of the reference material. So the wax room can see pictures of the original, pictures of the sprue system, pictures of the patina. Like every department has access to all of that reference material, but the pieces are tracked through that software, and we actually still print a paper version of it that moves through the shop with every single piece, so that when it's in the shell room and when it's in the pour yard, there's something that they can grab and read and not have to worry about destroying a piece of equipment. We haven't figured out how to get away from the paper trail, but we do have it all in our database as well.
Yeah, it's nice to have the two, technology and old-fashioned.
Yeah.
Christina asks, what is your current turnaround time for work?
That's a great question to talk about in this setting, because there's so many variables to that question. So we have the turnaround time for work that we already have molds for that are in our facility. And then we have the turnaround time for work that requires us to make a mold. And then we actually have two different production schedules, because we have what we consider our monumental line, and then we have our tabletop line. And oddly enough, a life-size figure kind of falls through the tabletop line, because we can move a life-size piece through about the same speed that we can move a tabletop piece through. But then we've got our monuments, the bigger than life-size pieces that are really scheduled out for years. But to answer the question, normally if we have a mold in-house already done, then we're working on like 12 to 14 weeks. If we're working on a mold, then we have the backlog of the mold department plus the 12 to 14 weeks. So that could make that 16 weeks, that could make that 18 weeks. And if we didn't have any molds to work on, it could maybe be that, we could shove the mold through real quickly and it would only be 12 weeks. And then our monuments are scheduled out because a lot of these big pieces are years in the making. So if you get beyond life size, I like to say that we really want to schedule that based on what our current capacity and what our calendar looks like. But normally, if you're working on a 10-foot figure, we can produce that piece in 6 months, mold and casting. But when we get into some of the huge pieces, like you may have seen in the video, some of those projects have 18 to 20 month lead times from when we start working on the project to when we anticipate completion or when we've been contracted for completion.
Impressive. Thanks. Gwen asks, how many employees are there?
I think right now we're 38, 35.
35?
Yeah.
Impressive. We also, Christina asks, do you ship finished work to the artist only or directly to galleries or collectors?
That's based on what the artist wants us to do. So artists that we've been working with for, the last 20 years will let us ship directly to their galleries or ship directly to clients, depending on, where we're going. So any of the above. Once we establish what those protocols are, those are set into our system so that we know what the artist's expectations are, and we don't accidentally ship somewhere we shouldn't. In the same vein of that question, we encourage all of our clients that we don't talk to galleries. So we do not want the galleries contacting us. We don't want them asking us about your production. We don't want them trying to put their sale above another gallery's sale. And so we found over the last 24 years that the best place for us to be is not involved in the gallery's communication.
Let's see. Richard has a question starting off with, I have always participated personally at the wax, metal chase, and patina phase. You mentioned Zoom and videos. Can you give any example of working with artists that have never been there that are used to being there?
Well, I don't know. Maybe some of our clients on this Zoom can speak to that if they feel up to it. I know I've got a couple in there. But without naming names specifically, I can say that, we work with Disney a lot, and that working with their Imagineers, they're extremely hands-on. They want to be, there and check everything. And in the last 3 years, we've produced about 85 life-size pieces for them. And instead of them flying and inspecting everything like they did in the first probably 6 or 8 pieces, they do everything digitally now because they trust us and we know what they're looking for, and we're able to show them photos, videos, and so they still come for final metal check before patina, but all the wax stages and all the in between processes they check that way. And we have Tom Tischler, I think would be fine with me naming him, who produces with us from Australia. At this point, doesn't actually check anything until it's patina, and then we send him patina fit up photos and checks at that point. So he trusts us enough at this point to do all of his wax, finish it all the way through, patina it, and then send him approvals. But it's different with every client. So it's really I won't say that we could produce for an artist and do that in 2 months, but I would say that if it was a mutually desired outcome, that if we actively work together for 6 months to a year, we could get to that point.
Charlotte asks, what is the ratio of traditional clay sculpting to 3D printing?
That's a hard one. If you think about tabletop bronzes, so life size and smaller, I would say it's still 80 or 90% traditional sculpting. But then as you think about the large, huge monumental pieces, I would say we're approaching a 50-50 ratio, where there's a lot of pieces going 3D printing, but we have spent the last 12 to 14 years kind of perfecting that process. We did an entire herd of dinosaurs for the Australian Age of Dinosaurs Museum in Australia for Tom and Travis Tischler. Those were all digitally sculpted from scans of the actual bones of the dinosaurs, and then they built the creatures on top of the skeletons. And so we went through that whole process 12 years ago, learning about every 3D printer that was on the market, the limitations of the printers, the limitations of the scanners, the limitations of the casting of those prints. And so we've really pushed trying to get to the point where we can create prints that have that feel of a hand sculpted surface. And you know, every iteration is getting better and better and better. So I think that, you know, that's the key, is that we don't want to lose anything in the 3D printing. And so we've got to do some tweaks with our scanning. We've got to do some tweaks with the digital file afterwards. And then we have to kind of really push the potential of the printer to be able to maintain that hand sculpted look through the whole process.
Okay, thank you. Richard asks, how is lead time different for 3D printed?
It's not a whole lot different. And our printer is printing, you know, every 3 days. It cycles, and it's a new build chamber. So if it's smaller pieces, we can fit them in kind of around other projects. But if it's a monument, then it kind of falls into that same line of where's our production schedule and how does that fit into what else is on order. So those numbers I was giving y'all pretty consistent for either 3D printed or wax pulled.
Okay, and Sonia asks, what is the largest size you can print? What format of 3D scan files are ideal for you to print?
What is say that again?
What is the largest size you can print? And then the second part is, what format of 3D scan files are ideal for you to print?
So the build chamber is 20 by 24 by 48, but we utilize that build chamber to its fullest. So we'll break the pieces down as we need to maximize the space. So we won't necessarily print an entire human torso in that space because the wasted negative space inside the hollow body would make the expense of printing that much higher than if we break it down into panels. But all those panels can be put back together before we cast them. So we're really not limited, but the printer can print, if you really pushed it, it can print a 24 by 20 by 48 inch section. And then the files, we prefer STLs if they're finished and they're, you know, ready. If they are in process files, our favorite way to receive those is ZTLs from ZBrush. If we actually can get the ZTL files, that allows us a lot of flexibility in refining those surfaces. Because one of the things we've run into and learned is that the detail needs to be enhanced to account for the printer, and then the surfacing through wax, shell, sandblasting, metal. And so when you're scanning something and then you're trying to get it printed, we've actually built some subtools and some brushes and stuff in ZBrush that we can take all of your existing texture and exaggerate it to the point where the print, once it gets through all of those steps, looks like it would have, right? But we've got to kind of punch it to get it to carry through all those steps. So OBJ and STL we can work with. If you're familiar with ZBrush and you're playing with that, then we prefer a ZTL if that's an option.
Okay, thank you. David asks, are your 3D printing sourced by folks sending you an electronic file, or do folks send you pieces you digitally enlarge to 3D print? So I guess.
So if I understand that correctly, we have sculptors who are digital sculptors that are sending us 3D files that are, you know, completely sculpted in ZBrush or some other, you know, Blender or something. But then we also have a Faro arm scanner and an Artex scanner. And so we scan small models, and then we create the digital file, we refine the digital file, we work with the artists. We have I forget the name of the software, but we have a way of sharing the 3D model with the client. You don't have to have a fancy computer. You don't have to have any of the sculpting software. You just have to have an internet browser, and we can upload the file. You can rotate it around, zoom in on it, look at it, and note any things that you need fixed on it. Or we can do that live on a Zoom call, and you can actually see with our lead sculptor the model on the screen, and he can rotate it in real time, and you can say, I want to enhance that wrinkle right there, or the muscle seems like it got a little washed out right here. Can we? And he can do it, on the fly while you're there. And we were able to do that with Tom Tischler on those mammoths. I don't know if y'all noticed, if y'all go back and you watch the video, you can see the 3-foot mammoth models that were in the creation department. That's what we started with. And then we're making those life-size models. And he did 3 2-hour sessions with Matthew remotely, refining those scanned meshes before we went to the full model, as far as going to the full-size print. So now Matthew had, probably 20 or 30 hours in between those sessions of tweaking and enhancing. But as far as, actual time on the computer, it was about 6 hours of kind of hovering over Matthew's shoulder and getting those tweaked exactly the way he wanted them.
So we sort of have a philosophical question from Tuck, and he asks, with the large volume you turn over, would you say we are living in the golden age of sculpture?
I don't know. I've heard that saying before. I can't remember. Another Foundry owner said that probably 10 years ago. I think, yeah, we're very lucky to, we may be. I don't know how, the whole world is functioning and how other foundries are faring, but we feel very blessed to be able to do the amount of work we do and get to work on the variety of pieces we work on. I do think that, and I don't want to open up this hot button topic, but we'll throw it out there and see if it explodes. But I am worried about what AI is going to do to all of this and how we as a manufacturing facility navigate that. So I think that there's something crazy fixing to happen, and we're all going to have to figure out what that means for our world.
Okay. And so Mark asks, do you offer any sort of teaching program for artists who want to learn casting?
Not yet. Not yet. We're so that's hard because we are such a big volume production facility. It's hard. We do occasionally have an intern. We've never put a full kind of training program in place, but we are remodeling a building downtown. It's a 1920s historic building. 7,000 square feet that we're going to be opening as a retail gallery and training, teaching. So we've got a little studio space built into the gallery where we can do demonstrations and talks and lectures. And so there's a potential as we get that retail space open that we could do, weekend experiences. But if we were talking about, some sort of long-term class, I don't think that we're going to have that in our capacity probably for the next 5 to 10 years, although it is a dream of mine to have a teaching facility tied directly to the Foundry.
Okay. We sort of have a question from Richard Becker that I don't quite follow. I don't know, Richard, if I unmute you, would you be comfortable asking it? Or Gwen, if you could.
Was this just a question about, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, it was just a question about the build volume.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I got it answered.
It's 24 by 20 by 48.
Got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's a big machine. That's nice. So it's SLS, right? It's the powder centering, and then you infuse that.
No, it's a PMMA.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I don't want to just bog us all down. If there were a 3D technology, would go forever probably, but thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. So to speak on that real quickly, we spent 4 years testing every printer on the market for the volume, the build size, the speed, and the quality. And you know, it's a huge investment to buy a printer like this. I mean, they're all $500,000 or more when you start getting into these big printers. What we ran into is that their SLA printers are not built to last 30 years, and the usable prints coming off of them is really, I mean, we did hundreds and hundreds of tests and had 4 different companies sending us samples. And I would say the best we got was a 50% success rate from them actually sending us samples that they thought were good enough for us to test. So this is the salespeople from the company trying to sell us a machine, and we couldn't get the numbers to ever work. And when we found this machine, and we ran the samples and we did all the testing, this is a German-built, solid piece of equipment that's designed to last 20, 30 years. It weighs 9,000 pounds, just the printer. And so the quality that it yields does start to deteriorate when you start trying to get down to a 10-inch figure or a 8-inch figure. But we found that 24-inch maquettes and up, the detail holds, and everything works. So I think that, you know, it definitely has a maximum capacity on monuments, but it does have a capacity to do smaller pieces. We have some smaller SLA printers that we do high resolution prints in. They can't be cast directly, so we have to make a rubber mold off of them. But we have that option if you're trying to take a monument and go down to a little tiny maquette. A lot of times we'll print that on an SLA printer, and then we'll make a rubber mold on it and traditionally cast it in order to maintain that high level of detail.
Thanks.
Sonia is just asking first clarification if it's STL or ZTL files.
So those are 2 different file types. So an STL is kind of the standard 3D model. You hear a lot of people talk about an STL file. The other real common one is an OBJ file. But when I say ZTL, that is a ZBrush file. That is the export of a Z tool. And it's kind of like anybody that's familiar with photography, it's like the difference between a TIFF file and a JPEG, right? There's so much more data for us to work with and make any adjustments that may need to be made to ensure the quality of the print is high in a ZTL file. But again, the ZTL file is really going to be something that somebody familiar with ZBrush and who's digitally sculpting or refining their own 3D scans is going to have access to. So we can use an STL, no problem.
And Danielle is just asking about that your new retail facility is in Bastrop as well as the Foundry
Yeah, it's going to be right downtown on Chestnut and Water Street. So it's about 3-4 minute drive from the Foundry.
Great. I think we are out of questions, but thank you so much for taking part with this. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it.
Awesome.
This is Gwen. I'm just going to share my screen again briefly and hope everyone can see this. But Clint and everyone at Pyrology, we just really wanted to thank you for taking the time and for making that film. That concludes our visit for now, but if anyone has more questions, please contact Pyrology directly, or you can contact our offices and we'll follow up with you or put you in touch with them. Huge thank you to everyone there. I know it took a lot of planning to make that film just for our use this evening, and it was really helpful because your facility is so gigantic. There's no way we could have just followed you around with a little camera.
Yeah, when you first asked me about that, I was trying to figure out how we could do that, and yeah, it was much better to film it in advance.
Yeah, that worked out really well. Thank you. So I just wanted to thank you again and thank everyone for joining us.